Coconuts grow at the highest point of the palm, facing the sun and our luminous Lord God. It gives us water, milk, coconut oil, and nutritious pulp. Unique in nature, it provides humankind with the element of selenium from its fibers. One wove mats, roofs, and ropes. From its trunk, one built furniture and entire houses. From its pit, one produced oil to drive away the darkness and to anoint the skin. Even the hollowed-out empty shell made an excellent vessel from which one could manufacture bowls, spoons, tankards, indeed, even buttons. Burning the empty shell finally was not only far superior to burning traditional firewood, but also an excellent means of keeping away mosquitoes and flies with its smoke. In short, the coconut was perfect. And to August Engelhardt, that perfection wasn't just divine design. It was a blueprint for a new way of life. Welcome to Capers and Cocktails, a true crime podcast that doesn't take itself too seriously and gives you something to enjoy while you listen. The following content may be disturbing to some. Discretion is advised. If you're enjoying one of our themed cocktails, ensure you're of legal drinking age and have fun, but drink responsibly. August Karl Engelhardt was born on November 27, 1877 in Nuremberg, Germany. He was the second son of Friedrich and Charlotte Engelhardt, who were evidently first cousins. That might eventually explain some things if you ask me. His older brother was Fritz, and he had an older sister, Julia, and a younger sister, Clara. His father owned a paint and varnish factory, so the family had a fair amount of money, but at least according to August, his childhood was deeply unhappy, and he was severely physically abused by both his mother and his father. When August was 17, his mother died, and 2 years later, in 1896, his father died. He left high school early to study physics and chemistry at university and got a job as a pharmacy assistant. In the late 1800s, pharmacists, often called apothecaries, were expected to master not only the art of compounding and dispensing medicines, but also they needed an expanding body of knowledge in chemistry, botany, and physiology. Many remedies were rooted in folk medicine, and pharmacies often doubled as general stores, selling everything from tinctures to tobacco. When he worked in the pharmacy, August developed an interest in healthy living. While there, he found a book that changed his life. Fruit and Bread, A Scientific Diet, was a book by Gustav Schlickisen, a 19th century German health reformer who promoted a raw, plant-based diet centered on fruits and whole grains. He believed that cooking food was unnatural and that returning to this Edenic diet would lead to physical and moral purification. Raw, plant-based diet, 1900? Dang, some things really do come around again and again, huh? In the fall of 1899, August joined an association for a life close to nature called the Youngborn. The Youngborn, which is German for Fountain of Youth, was a back-to-nature healing colony founded in 1895 by naturopath Adolf Just in the Harz Mountains of Germany. It was part of a larger cultural wave known as the Lebensreform movement, which pushed back against industrialization by promoting natural living. At the Youngborn, people sought to reconnect with nature through raw vegetarian diets, sunbathing in the nude, barefoot walks, and even sleeping under the stars. They shunned using mattresses, saying that followers should sleep close to the earth, actually touching the earth. That's why they were also barefoot. The idea was simple, but pretty radical for the time. Nature heals and modern life poisons. Some things never change. This wasn't just a wellness retreat, it was a way of life. Residents avoided alcohol, tobacco, and meat, believing those things corrupted the body and soul. Silence, cold water therapy, and long periods of contemplation were also part of the daily rhythm. Just's book, Return to Nature, ! Became the unofficial Bible of the movement, drawing in seekers from all across Europe. Unfortunately for August and the Youngborn, legal troubles started to plague the group and its founders, brothers Adolf and Rudolf. I like that. Nudism was considered illegal immorality, and Adolf was sentenced to prison for improper practice as a naturopath. So August, who was all in on the Lebensreform movement, decided to peace out of Europe to live out his ideas of living the life close to nature. Can you really blame him? I mean, sounds good to me. After serving for 1 year in the military, August took his pretty big inheritance, himself and something like 1,200 books, onto a steamship in July 1902. He arrived in German New Guinea in the West Pacific on September 15, 1902. In October of 1902, he bought a 185-acre coconut and banana plantation on the coral island of Cabacon. He paid 41,000 marks, or $4.84 million 2025 dollars. Remember, he had that paint and varnish fortune to spend. At the time, on Cabacon, the other 120 acres that August hadn't bought were a protected nature reserve inhabited by an indigenous group of 40 Melanesians. August was the only white guy around, and he built a 3-room hut to house his ideas and all those books and stripped naked, giving up clothes completely. He also started to develop a philosophy, cocovorism, about a fruit that he saw as the perfect food, the coconut. That was his quote at the beginning. It was the perfect food in part because it was in the shape of a human head. He believed they were the most divine food due to their close proximity to the sun, and claimed that a pure coconut diet could lead to spiritual enlightenment, physical perfection, and even immortality. He started making a living trading in coconuts, dried coconut and coconut oil. He gave up on the bananas, even, after developing an ulcer on his right leg. At this point, he adopted a mono diet of coconut and only coconut all day, every day, blaming other tropical fruits for that ulcer on his leg. August was not new in his beliefs. The coconut has been revered for thousands of years across tropical regions, earning nicknames like the tree of life for its incredible versatility. Every part of the plant serves a purpose, from the water and flesh packed with electrolytes and healthy fats to the husk and shell used for tools, fuel, and even mosquito repellent. Modern nutrition backs up some of the hype, too. Coconut water hydrates, we know, we all like coconut water. Coconut oil contains antimicrobial properties, and its meat offers fiber and energy-boosting MCTs. August's views expanded, or I shouldn't say expanded, but he started saying some other crazy, maybe coconut-addled things. He declared that the brain was the noblest organ in the human body because in his view, it was closest to the sun. He rejected the idea that the brain draws its power from the digestive system, instead suggesting that it gets its energy from the hair roots, which absorb sunlight. To him, sunlight was the true source of the brain's strength. I guess that's why he doesn't eat anything but coconuts. Who is he preaching all this cocovorism to? Well, a cult leader needs members, right? According to a New York Times article from October 15th, 1905, quote, his plan was to have his sect worship the sun. He held that man was a tropical animal, not intended to live in caves called houses, but to wander as Adam did, with the sun beating upon him all day and the dews of heaven for a mantle at night. Living such a life, he believed that the healing and curative powers of the sun would in time render a man so immune that sickness could be overcome. End quote. He started sending word back for some other Europeans who were ready to eat coconuts and only coconuts. He called them the Order of the Sun, or Sonnenorden, and he had some ads published in Europe to get them on the ships. One of the big worries about traveling to tropical locations at the time was malaria. Malaria is a serious disease spread by mosquito bites. It hits fast with fever, chills, and exhaustion that can and do turn deadly if left untreated. Not to worry, though, because as August announced in his advertisements, he had the cure for malaria, one that was even better than quinine. You guessed it, coconut. In 1903, the first of his cult members arrived, including nature writer August von Bethmann-Olsoben, who August had written a book with a few years before. He moved to the island with just a few others, including Heinrich Conrad and Wilhelm Heine. According to the New Zealand Herald, quote, the long-haired, naked vegetarians, thought to number no more than 30, were a stark contrast to Kaiser Wilhelm's rigid turn-of-the-century Germany and modern-day perceptions of German colonizers in the Pacific as military men, traders, or administrators, end quote. Basically, they were hippies who ate a lot of coconuts. And speaking of coconuts, let's drink. Oh, but before we drink a drink, how could it not have coconut? Can I ask a favor? Like, comment, subscribe, write a review, share this episode with a friend. Listen, you can even just pick one of these, and I'd be so happy I could eat a whole coconut. The Bushwhacker got its boozy start back in the spring of 1975 at the Ship's store in Sapphire Village, St. Thomas, named, believe it or not, after a guest's Afghan hound named Bushwhack. Since then, it's become a cult classic, even earning its own annual festival down in Pensacola Beach, Florida, where fans have been celebrating its creamy cocktail fame since 1986. To make this tropical delight, you'll blend rum, Kahlua, cream de cacao, cream of coconut, and milk with some ice. Yum. Now that you're enjoying a drink that August himself would have enjoyed, minus the alcohol and all the ingredients that weren't coconut, well, we'll just ignore that. Let me tell you that most of you would not even be invited to join the Sonnenorden. Why? Well, in order to be a member of August's club, cult, you need to have a noble and excellent character, including getting 2 letters of recommendation from someone that August personally knew. You also had to pay your own passage to the tune of 10,000 modern dollars. You had to agree to live in the nude in all places and at all times. And you had to be a man. I know you're shocked that more people didn't take August up on his offer to join the Sonnenorden. I should say that I don't think this was a sexual thing. August himself never had a relationship with a man or a woman, and some speculated it was due to mental illness, the severe abuse he suffered as a child, or that he was asexual. I personally don't think it really matters. And the truth is, even if some people did meet all of these qualifications and were excited about the prospect of eating only coconuts for the rest of their lives, they might have been too scared to board a ship bound for August's paradise because of headhunters. Real headhunters, my cocktail conspirators, were active in parts of German New Guinea at the time. They were tribes that took heads as part of spiritual rituals or rites of passage to honor the dead. Stories of skull shrines and ceremonial warfare spread fast among Europeans, adding a layer of danger to an already bizarre coconut cult dream. But August did attract around 30 converts, who unfortunately started dropping dead. Heinrich Ukens, a 24-year-old vegetarian from Heligoland, was one of the first to arrive. Within 6 weeks, he died after developing a fever. Max Lutzow, a renowned Berlin concert pianist, joined the Sonnenorden, but fell seriously ill after being stranded during a storm. It's a very complicated story, a fight, I don't know. But he died shortly thereafter, unable to recover from the ordeal. August Bethman, August's co-author and early supporter, began to question the cult's practices. He planned to leave the island, but died under mysterious circumstances before he could depart. Probably coconuts. Anyway, Wilhelm Hein joined the colony in November 1905, but died 2 months later. Ernst Schweitzer, a Swiss follower, arrived in 1908, but also died just a month later. 5 out of 30 are not really the best odds. I'm sure you can probably guess why they didn't make it long on August's island. It was less a utopia and more a harsh reality of sunstroke, tropical disease, and the not-so-magical effects of an all-coconut diet. They're missing key nutrients like protein, iron, and vitamin B12, which means muscle loss, fatigue, and all kinds of deficiency issues. Plus, the super high saturated fat content, not exactly heart-healthy in the long run. So while coconuts can keep you going for a while, they're not the miracle food August wanted them to be. Also, if you're wondering, coconuts are not a better treatment for malaria than quinine. In fact, coconuts are not a treatment for malaria at all. So it's possible malaria was a cause of death for at least some of the Sonnenorden. As a result of all these deaths, and it seems like whatever Sonnenorden were still alive, headed back to Germany, disillusioned and hungry, the governor of the island actually ordered a halt to new immigrants. August was suddenly in a cult of one. Probably not surprisingly to any of you, August's physical and mental health completely deteriorated. He was emaciated and hollow-eyed. Sores and ulcers developed all over his body. He had bloody gums and started losing his teeth. The indigenous people on the island thought he'd been possessed by demons, as he could be seen wandering all over the island, remember naked, preaching loudly in German to the trees and shaking his fist at the sky. At least twice, he was taken to a hospital on a nearby island, but both times, after being returned to slightly better health, he escaped and returned back to his hut, his books, and his coconuts. In a strange, well, I guess not more strange turn of events in this whole episode, at the beginning of World War I, the Australians actually took over the island and found this strange German resident. They shipped him off to a POW camp, but they found him to be too physically and mentally ill to be considered either a threat or a worthwhile prisoner. They released him and he returned to his naked, malnourished life on the island. August Engelhardt's death is shrouded in just as much mystery as his life. What we do know is that he died somewhere around 1919, reportedly from heat stroke, malnutrition, or a combination of both. By that point, he was emaciated, severely sunburned, and likely suffering from multiple infections and deficiencies from his extreme lifestyle. He was 42 years old. It was estimated that at the time of his death, he weighed no more than 66 pounds. There is no burial site. It might have possibly been destroyed in World War II. Swiss author Christian Kracht drew inspiration from August's bizarre life for his 2012 novel Imperium. August also takes center stage in Adrian McKinty's 2014 novel The Sun is God. Adrian even traveled to the island in 2014, only to find that nearly all traces of August's coconut-fueled commune had vanished. But I prefer to think of August Engelhardt as he is described in that 1905 New York Times article, which said, quote, "By day, Engelhardt's joy was that of a dream realized. At sunset, the lagoon clasped his god in a broil of molten lava. Then came the night, with the great dome of stars, the breeze rustling through the cocoa fronds, and the Pacific chanting like a great organ, lulling him to sleep." End quote. Thanks for hanging out with me. I think that if we've learned something here, it's that a monodiet, a word that I didn't think even needed to exist until this episode, is really not good for you. Coconuts are great for you, inside and outside of your body, but only if it's part of how you take care of yourself. I can appreciate August's longing to buck the trend, forge his own path, and appreciate life in nature for sure. Another example of a good idea just gone a little too far. Heed the lessons we've learned from August. We're off next week, but in 2 weeks, another jewel heist. I'll see you then, and remember, there are always alternatives to coconuts alone and to killing your cult followers, even by accident.